Hello everyone, welcome to this seminar, and we have this seminar every Wednesday for the Certificate in Legal Studies. But by all means, if you're interested in other law programs at HKU SPACE, I most welcome your questions. So whether you're thinking about the Certificate in Legal Studies, or perhaps the London ULB, or perhaps a very popular CPE, also called the Graduate Diploma in English and Hong Kong Law, please feel free to ask us or me any questions. So my role today is not to so much sell you this program, but to assess what your needs are, because the program that's right for you might not be right for someone else, and the program which might be right for someone else might not be right for you. Okay? There are many excellent law programs in Hong Kong and overseas. There are a number of different institutions offering various types of law programs, including, of course, the Bachelor of Laws, Juris Doctor, and of course our Graduate Diploma in Hong Kong Law, and so on. So there are many different programs in Hong Kong and overseas. So which one is right for you? Well, it depends entirely on what you want to do. Many of our Certificate in Legal Studies students use the Certificate in Legal Studies to become a paralegal, a legal executive, law clerk, and even to become a lawyer. So what is the difference between the Certificate in Legal Studies and other law programs? One, the difference is that it takes a little bit longer to complete this program if you want to become a lawyer. Secondly, for many of our students, they don't really need a full law program. In other words, they don't need the full Juris Doctor, they don't need the full CPE, they don't need the full LB, right? So if you're working in, for example, compliance, if you're working in the banking industry, if you're working in HR, engineering, or other types of professions, and you're very happy there, and you just need to know more about the law, maybe this is enough for you, right? Maybe a Juris Doctor, which trains you to become a lawyer, is an overkill, right? It's too much, okay? So let me just tell you something about the Certificate in Legal Studies. Okay? So it's basically 5 law areas. In other words, 5 distinct law modules, or 5 subjects, right? We cover this in the space of about 9 months. If you include exams, it's about a year. We've been running this program for more than 40 years, I guess about 45 years or longer. So we have a lot of experience in running this program and in running law programs in general. In fact, HKU SPACE was one of the first institutions to offer law programs in Hong Kong, even before the University of Hong Kong. So we have a lot of experience in refining this program to make sure it fits in with your needs. And we have had a lot of students since that time. The other feature of the program is that it is open entry. What does open entry mean? Open entry means that you don't need to have an IELTS, you don't need to show us your GMAT, right? Anyone here can join, right? If you're listening, you can join this program. The entry barriers are non-existent, right? If you can understand what I'm saying, that's sufficient. Also, the pass rate is very high, right? So for this program, traditionally, the pass rate is somewhere between, say, 90%, 95%, etc., right? So it is not that difficult to complete. In other words, even with an open entry course, finishing this program is very attainable for the majority of our students. Most of our students will be successful in completing this program. If you want to become a lawyer, this program also is a pathway eventually, right, for you to get to PCLL, right? The certificate alone is not enough, unfortunately. It's only a 12-month program, but we have different programs which you can articulate to afterwards. In other words, after the certificate, there's the diploma, advanced diploma, etc. There's a step-by-step process in which you can become a lawyer. If that is your goal, right? Not that you have to, but this is an entirely feasible option for you to take, right? And this is the step, right? If you want to become a lawyer, so you first of all start with the certificate in legal studies, and then you move on to the diploma, the advanced diploma in legal studies, and the advanced diploma for legal executives, right? I know the ladder looks like a very long path, but if you actually look at the steps, starting from the certificate in legal studies, going all the way here, the total number of years might surprise you. It is only 4.5 years. While 4.5 years seems like a long time, if you compare that to the average time it takes to complete an undergraduate Bachelor of Laws, it will take you about 4 years. Remember, all these programs are part-time, so you're completing this 4.5-year program on a part-time basis, right? Part-time basis. So, in fact, you're spending a lot less time than the average undergraduate student would take for him or her to complete the program. Right? So part-time, 4.5 years. And there are many different exit points. In other words, you don't have to do the 4.5 years. If you want to finish and exit at the certificate in legal studies level, that's fine. And if you want to exit at the diploma level, that's fine too, and so on, right? So I won't talk too much about, why legal knowledge might be important, right? Whether you work in human resources, engineering, finance, compliance, all kinds of sectors, right? From education to aviation, right? Having legal knowledge is important. And yes, you might be thinking, well, I can use AI and I can use those tools, but how do you know the answer is actually right or not, right? After all, sometimes it hallucinates, right? Sometimes it gives you the wrong information. So how do you, or will you be able to distinguish between a right answer and a wrong answer without any legal training? And you can't. So having that knowledge, knowing what is the right law and what is actually just a made-up answer is very important. These are some of our past students. They're not giving us, a kudos or anything like that. This is just information that we've been able to obtain through, open source information. For example, on the websites, in the LinkedIn profiles, and other sources of information. So this is not taken from our student database. But I just want to show you that we have a very wide sample of students. As I mentioned, you can look on LinkedIn. We have students from food, health and safety, human resources, NGOs, all kinds of sectors, aviation, teaching, sports coaching, right? You can see them in different companies, different industries, right? Hong Kong Telecom, Morgan Stanley, HSBC, Marriott Hotels, Bank of China, PCCW, you know, all kinds of people, all walks of life, right? So we have students who are quite young, right, in their early 20s, to more mature students, right, who actually retired, but just want to know more about the law, right? So many different kinds of students. So your background will not be, you know, very different from the existing pool of students that we have. Let me talk about the different law modules. After all, when you pay your fees and you come and sit in the classroom, what are you actually getting, right, for your time and your money? Well, you'll be studying these 5 law modules. And Hong Kong is a common law system, so you might look at these modules and think, well, they're not so different from other law programs, and I would have to agree, right? The modules are very similar, right? There's always going to be an introduction to law module. We call it Hong Kong legal systems and methods, so introduction to the Hong Kong legal system. The second module is civil procedure, which talks about the rules of litigation, the rules of the court, what is the right court to go to, etc., etc. And then you have obligations, which is essentially contracts and torts. What is an agreement? What makes an agreement legally binding? What is a tort? What is negligence? Right? What is defamation? What is harm being done to someone? Right? And company law and partnership law, talking about the formation of a company, directors' duties, partnerships, and then the constitutional law of Hong Kong, basic law. Right? So these 5 modules make up the entirety of the Certificate in Legal Studies program, right? And you can complete these modules in about 9 to 12 months. And should you find these modules useful and you want to articulate, in other words, move up higher to the diploma, we have another 5 very interesting modules, right? Criminal law, talking about murder, arson, theft, land law and conveyancing, buying and selling property, licenses, leases, family law, marriage, divorce, custody of children, succession and probate, talking about what happens to property when people pass away, and of course the mainland legal systems. This program is designed for working students. What does that mean, right? We all have family obligations, work obligations, who has time to study, right? So we try to fit this program in as much as possible into your schedule. So we have night classes, we have weekend classes on Saturday afternoons. So if you work on Saturday morning, or you just simply want to relax, the classes on Saturday afternoons. And we hold multiple exams a year, at least 2 exams a year. In other words, you have that flexibility to take the exams at your own time, at your own pace, to make sure that you're not going to be stressed. Right? I mentioned this diagram before, right? Just to emphasize that there is this articulation pathway, step by step, if you want to get into PCLL. And also, we have other programs, as I mentioned before. For example, the Excellent London ULB course. We have, of course, the Graduate Diploma in English and Hong Kong Law. Okay, so just because you're starting on a certificate doesn't mean that you have to be on a certificate in legal studies pathway. We have other pathways in Hong Kong SPACE, which you might find interesting. Right? Our teaching team is made up of very experienced lawyers, retired members of the judiciary, in-house legal counsel, in other words, working or retired legal professionals, right, who have years of experience in their particular field. I don't want to spend too much time comparing apples to oranges, but I just want to emphasize, that the certificate in legal studies, right, is a very affordable, high pass rate. It is a course which is listed under the government CEF fund, so if you're eligible, you can claim money back from the government, right? So some takeaways for your time, right? It's an easy program to complete, relatively affordable for a law program. We've been running this program for a long, long time, and we have had students who have gone on to become lawyers. Not that you have to. There are multiple exit points. If you don't enjoy the program, you're not stuck with doing this for 3 or 4 years, simply exit in the certificate or continue to the diploma, and so on. You have a choice, you have the freedom, right? So flexibility, high pass rate, affordable, easy to complete, right? So our program is already half full. If you want to enroll, I suggest you enroll as soon as you can. If you've got any questions about our law programs, feel free to message us. We have email, we have chat, etc., etc. Thank you very much for your time.